Alright, hi guys, this is Mr. Manning, and this is going to be a video that I call Think Inside the Box, and basically it's going to be about the parts of the computer, sometimes referred to as the hardware of the computer. We're also going to talk a little bit about the four types of computers in this video. In fact, that's where we're going to start. And then we're going to move into what I consider to be the most important parts of the computer, and we'll discuss like what each one does and a little bit about what you should be looking for if you were going to purchase a computer today. So along with this video, you should have access to some notes. They look like this, and they're available on Canvas. You might want to consider filling these in as we go along with this video. Okay, so let's start with the four types of computers. And basically, each of these kind of has its own advantage or disadvantage. So the first one is the desktop computer, and this is a machine I'm sure most of you are very familiar with. We have these at the high school. They are the ones that have a monitor and the actual computer itself are not attached to each other, and there are lots of cables. There's probably a cable for the mouse, the keyboard, the power cable, and so on. So let's talk about some advantages of these first. So one real big advantage is that they are usually less expensive than the other ones. And the reason they're less expensive is because you get a little bit more like bang for your buck, sort of say. You usually get more power for what you're spending money on. They are more durable and reliable. They are not built to be portable, so you're not really supposed to move them around. Therefore, because they don't move around, you get more power out of them, and they are more reliable. They are easy to upgrade and customize. A lot of people that want to be able to kind of like tinker with their computers and be able to customize them. A lot of people that like to play games in particular prefer a desktop computer because they can add in special stuff that makes the games look better. Some like graphic design professionals, those kinds of people also really enjoy them. And then here in yellow, one of the big disadvantage is what I was just mentioning a moment ago, is they are not portable at all. So when you purchase a desktop computer, you know that you're going to have it in the same spot all the time. It's not something that you're going to want to move around very often. Okay, an all-in-one computer is the next one, and I have a picture of a Mac, an iMac, or an Apple computer. And one of the reasons I chose this picture is because Apple was one of the very first companies to come out with the all-in-one concept. And basically, this is not a laptop. It's not really meant to be very portable, but the computer and the monitor are all in the same thing. In fact, if you could kind of rotate this picture around, you would be able to see on the back side that there is a space where all of the parts of the computer are in. They are super easy to set up. The only cord that you have to plug in is the power cord, and then you hit a button on the front and they turn on. They also require less desk space, which a lot of people prefer. They kind of look nice and sleek. This one, it looks like it has a wireless keyboard and a wireless mouse, so looks really nice. One disadvantage, though, is they are really difficult to customize or upgrade. Because the manufacturers put all of the stuff together, they put the monitor and all of the parts of the computer in one compact space, it's difficult to upgrade. So when you buy an all-in-one computer, you are pretty much going to have the same all-in-one computer for the life of it. You might be able to upgrade small things like the RAM, which we'll talk about in a little while, but most likely you're not going to make any major changes to an all-in-one computer. Okay, and our last two types of computers, we've got a laptop, which I'm sure all of us are very familiar with. Don't really need to talk a whole lot about those. They are very portable. They are battery powered, so that is the huge advantages of them, is that you can take them anywhere and you're not required to be connected to a power outlet. They're not terribly powerful. They're getting better, but if you want something to like play games on or something like that, laptop's probably not the best option for you. And then finally the tablet, which of course is like your iPads or other portable small computers, maybe a Kindle, something like that. They are very portable. In fact, that's the main purpose of them, is that you can take them anywhere, even more so than a laptop. They don't require power, but they have some pretty big disadvantages. For instance, there's no keyboard attached. You can buy things that will attach a keyboard, but it's extra money. It's all app-based. They do have touchscreens, which of course is nice, but they have limited connections and abilities. So tablet computers are good for certain things, but they don't quite have the processing power as the other three types that we were just discussing. Okay, so those are the 4 types of computers, and hopefully you've taken an opportunity to fill out this table so far. If you haven't, you can go back and do that. Okay, now we're going to move into the different parts of the computers. And in my opinion, these are the most important parts that you need to know as a computer applications student. There are more things inside the computer than this, but I feel like that these are the major ones, stuff that you would actually want to know a little bit about if you were going to go buy a computer. So let's start with the hard drive. So the hard drive is probably something you've heard of before, because pretty much every device that you own has a hard drive, including your cell phone and your iPad and any computers that you have at home. The hard drive is where most things are stored on your computer. So when I say like most things, these would be files like your music, your pictures, any videos that you have downloaded, the games that you play, any apps, all of that kind of stuff is stored generally on the hard drive. And for most of us, we get kind of frustrated because we run out of hard drive space really quickly, especially on smaller devices like cell phones and tablets, because their hard drives are very small. So if you're working with like 16 gigabytes or 32 or 64 gigabytes, you can run out of space very quickly. Speaking of gigabytes, most hard drives are measured in gigabytes, although it is becoming more and more common for them to be measured in what's called terabytes. A terabyte is just simply 1,000 gigabytes. Right now, if you were to go purchase a desktop computer, you would be able to find terabyte hard drives pretty easily. You may be able to find a terabyte hard drive in a laptop, but it's not quite as common, and well, in fact, no tablets or cell phones would have a terabyte hard drive yet, but it is possible in the future. All right, let's move on to the power supply. The power supply is what provides power to the different parts of the computer or the device. So its main purpose is to convert the power that's coming from either the battery, if it's a portable device, or from the wall outlet, and actually distribute that power to all of the other parts. And it needs to make sure that it gets the correct amount of power. So some computers require different sizes of power supplies. If you want a machine that is going to play like the latest and greatest games and make them look absolutely beautiful, you're going to need a pretty large power supply. But if you have just a simple cell phone or tablet, it won't require nearly as large of one. Power supplies can also help determine the battery life on portable devices. All right, let's move to the motherboard now. So the motherboard is the brain of the computer. It does all of the thinking or all of the processing for the computer. It is actually made up of 2 different things. The 2 things is the processor and the RAM. And the RAM stands for Random Access Memory. You won't need to know that for a summative, although it's just kind of a nice little tidbit. Let's talk about the processor first. So the processor, there's a couple of different companies that make processors. Usually Pentium and AMD are the 2 most popular. So if you're going to go buy a new computer, you'd probably run into those 2 things. Processors are always measured in gigahertz. I know that sounds a lot like gigabytes, but gigahertz is what a processor is measured in, or sometimes you'll see it abbreviated GHz. More up-to-date computers have more than one processor. In fact, a lot of them have 2, 4, maybe even 8 processors that are all working together on all the things that you're asking your computer to do. The more processors you have, the more things that it can do at one time, so it can multitask easier and it is faster. A common amount of processor in today's computers is somewhere between 2.5 gigahertz all the way up to maybe 4 gigahertz. That's not every single machine, but that's common. So the RAM is the thing that goes along with the processor to determine how fast the computer is. It's part of the motherboard. RAM is also measured in gigabytes, so that is the same thing that the hard drive is measured in. Except for when you purchase RAM, you usually purchase a much smaller amount of gigabytes than you do on the hard drive. The hard drive, you're going to have like maybe 500 gigabytes or maybe a terabyte, which if you remember is 1,000. RAM is going to be probably maybe 4, 8. If you have a really nice computer, maybe 16 or 32 gigabytes of RAM. Those would be very nice computers that are pretty fast. The more RAM that you have, the more things that your computer can do and the more smoothly it will run. All right, and then we're going to talk just real quickly about some portable storage devices. So the hard drive is the main place where you would store your files, but if you want to be able to move the files around, you have some options. Flash drive, probably most of us are familiar with those. Sometimes they're called USBs. They actually plug into the USB port. That's where they get their name. And they can be several gigabytes large. Not quite as large as a hard drive, but you can still get 64, 128, 256 gigabytes of space in a tiny little flash drive. CDs and DVDs, they're becoming a little out of date at this point. Most people don't put information on the CDs and DVDs like they once did. They have a limited amount of space that they can hold, and flash drives have just kind of made them obsolete. And actually, the next thing I'm going to talk about is probably going to make both of these things obsolete, and that is cloud storage. So cloud storage is when you store things to computers that are connected to the internet. And usually it is a company that provides you the computers or the storage space. Some of the most popular cloud storage places are Dropbox, Google Drive, which we use here at school, iCloud, if you have an iPhone, you're familiar with that. Microsoft has SkyDrive. There are just lots and lots of cloud-based storage options. Don't want to get into a lot of the details on cloud storage. However, when we talk about the internet later this semester, we will discuss how cloud storage works. All right, and then the very last thing that I think you guys maybe want to know a little bit about are these things called the video and the sound card. So the video card is a device that basically is in charge of the graphics on the computer or the images that you see on the monitor. And this is really important to people that care about how high quality the graphics are. So gamers and graphic designers come to mind right away. The sound card is basically the exact same thing, but for audio. So people that would be really that would find audio to be important, like maybe musicians, DJs, video editors, those kinds of people, they would want to have a really good sound card. These devices can be very expensive. If you're big into games, you can spend hundreds of dollars on a video card and sound card, but they are fairly easy to upgrade. So especially if you have a desktop computer, which if you're a gamer, you probably do, you can open up the desktop computer and you can replace the video card if you're willing to pay the money for it. Okay guys, so I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that you've had a chance to fill in these notes. Here at the bottom there is a section about Mac versus PC. We're not going to talk about that on this video. That's going to be on a video a little bit later on. All right, thank you.